Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to welcome you to the City of Somerville Zoning Board of Appeals meeting for Wednesday, January the 18th, 2023, and it's just 6:01. Pursuant to Chapter 107 of the Acts of 2022, this meeting of the Somerville Zoning Board of Appeals will be conducted via remote participation. A recording of these proceedings can be accessed at any time using the registration link at the top of this agenda. My name is Susan Fontano. I'm your chair. And we're going to start off. 1 second, I just lost you folks. There you go. We're going to start off under general business, approval of the minutes from October 12th, 2022. Madam Clerk.
Yes, Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes as sent around for October 12th of 2022.
Second.
Seconded by Ian Berkelman. All in favor of accepting and approving the minutes of October 12th, 2022, please say aye or nay as we go around. Brian, let's see, now we do, everybody's going to vote on this? No, just the board. Okay. Ian Brockelman.
Aye.
Susan Fontano. Aye. Ian Fullerton.
Aye.
Catherine Garavaglia.
Aye.
And Zachary Zaremba.
Aye.
I hate to be ignorant. You are the regular member, yes?
Yes.
Zachary, yes? Okay, thank you.
Correct.
I want to make sure the title's all set. Thank you so much. Let the record show the minutes were approved 100%. Thank you. Next item on the agenda, Madam Clerk.
Yes, Madam Chair, I believe that is moving on to 299 Broadway, P&Z 22-092, which was continued from January 4th.
Thank you. Welcome. Adam Dash, are you there?
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the
Hello.
board. Hi, Adam Dash, 48 Grove Street in Somerville, representing the applicants Mark Development LLC, Beacon Communities LLC, and Rise Together. Just a little housekeeping tonight. Adam Benjamin from Mark Development will be driving the slides if he could be given, and there he is, permission to do so. Just to introduce who's here tonight. From Mark Development, we have Robert Korf, Damian Chaviano, Scott Lombardi, and of course, Adam Benjamin. From Beacon Communities, we have Josh Cohen and Leanne Hanfield-Curtin. From Rise Together, we have Herbie Duvernay. And we have from Util Architects, Jonathan Palazzolo. From VHB, the traffic and parking consultant, Randy Hart. And from Bowler Engineering, who's the civil engineer on the project, Zachary Richards and Jared Walsh. Presenting tonight will be Morgan Barnacote from Future Green on the civic spaces, and Jesse Bercon from Graffito on the retail strategies. We provided you, as you know, with a project overview on December 14th, 2022, and then dove into the building related topics last time on January 4th, 2023. Tonight, we'll be reviewing the civic spaces and the retail topics. Since that last meeting with the board on January 4th, I would note that the Office of Sustainability and Environment has issued its certificate of required materials, so we are good with them. The planning board has recommended approval of the project. I'm assuming you've received that after we had several meetings with them. We're working with mobility and wrapping up the parking pass waiver conditions. And we have filed updated plans last week to reflect discussions we've been having with mobility and public space and urban forestry, and then to update the waiver list. So hopefully you've seen those as well. None of this changes the fundamentals of the project. It's just dealing with those details as we've gone through. So all of this keeps us on track for possible vote on the comprehensive permit on February 1st, should the board be so inclined. But without further ado, I would like to turn this over to Morgan Barnacote from Future Green to walk us through the civic spaces, which are a public, there is a pocket park on Sewell Street, and there's a pocket plaza on Broadway. Morgan, are you there? There you are.
Thanks, Adam.
Great. My name is Morgan Barnacote. I'm a landscape architect on the project, as Adam said. We're Future Green Studio out of Brooklyn, New York. Next slide, please. Next slide. I think we've been through the existing conditions a few times, but I just want to go through briefly just to kind of quickly bring the site back into focus for us all as we go through the civic spaces. The neighborhood plan, when we started it out, we did a civic space study, and it was a really great way for us to kind of dive in and kind of become more, have a deeper understanding of the site within a half-mile radius, and also really specifically look at the types of civic spaces within those as they relate to the types of civic spaces that we're proposing. So, Pocket Park and Pocket Plaza. There was no Pocket Plazas in the half-mile radius, so we had to look kind of further afield for precedents for those. But there was a number of kind of parks and pocket parks and different things, predominantly athletic fields, dedicated playgrounds, and that helped kind of shape our thinking about the civic spaces as we went through the process of design. Next slide. Just an existing view, Broadway looking east. The site, as we all know, is kind of predominantly a parking lot, so impervious kind of surface with various buildings. Next slide, please. That same kind of idea looking west. Next slide. And again, on Sewell Street, where the proposed park is, we have this existing basketball court, again, impervious surface, really no existing planting or intentional planting. So, kind of not the most inviting environment. And then the image on the right, just looking at the kind of typology of architecture, the residential character of the neighbors and the adjacency to that Sewell Street basketball court proposed park. The site analysis, again, just kind of really driving home the impervious nature of the site, but also I think something that became quite important in the beginning of the kind of planning development was the realization that there was a current path to travel through the site, kind of through the parking lot, down these inaccessible steps through the Sewell Street basketball court. That was something that UTL and the design team really kind of stuck onto as a critical element in terms of shaping the master plan and leading us to propose an accessible route, so a step-free route in place of that actually cuts from Broadway to Sewell Street. We'll talk more about that later on as a space that we've come to call the Muse. This is just a kind of a civic space scale comparison. Again, when getting started, we knew we had a kind of an envelope for the plaza and the park. We kind of wanted to look at local examples with kind of similar square footages to get a sense of what not only could kind of fit into those spaces, but also kind of understand the character and the kind of typologically, what's happening in the surrounding areas. The park obviously wants to be something that's a bit more soft, kind of informal, and the plaza wants to be more kind of a hardscape space with kind of its retail adjacencies. Next slide. So with that, we'll go into kind of a bit of a civic space, a deeper dive into the design review. Here's the kind of public realm concept we touched a little bit on, in the preliminary kind of overview, but you can see that kind of civic plaza on Broadway, the Sewell Park along Sewell Street, and then these kind of publicly accessible spaces that connect those, which gives us a really kind of a unique kind of presentation of civic spaces on this site. And it's a really great opportunity, creating all this kind of porosity into the neighborhood. So not only do we have the Muse that connects north to south, we're also proposing what we call Temple Passes, which connects Temple Street down to Sewell Park. And that corner is really activated by the proposal of the Winter Hill Community Room. So that kind of further activates and welds together all of those kind of exciting connections. Next slide, please. This is kind of a visual of that idea that, on the left you have building A, on the right you have building B, and a little bit of the plaza, but there's that kind of idea of that kind of view shed and connection, the kind of the scale that will be as you go from Broadway to the plaza and the Broadway to through the Muse to the park. Excuse me. So with the site plan, I think something that's interesting from a design perspective in the landscape, just to kind of think about a little bit is, you know, again, we have that civic plaza with a kind of more formal structure, and the park with it's a little bit more informal. And the idea that we kind of studied and deployed was using the Muse to kind of set out more of a way to kind of break down the character of those spaces with this kind of meandering triolet. And again, you can kind of see, you know, the Temple Passage coming in from Temple Street, connecting down to the park, and all these different kind of connections, which kind of creates kind of the feeling, I think, of a larger, you know, a larger civic space offering, which is just, I think, really exciting. I think what will be helpful is we'll kind of dive into these spaces as kind of enlargements, and I can talk a little bit more about the character and the, you know, the things that are happening in those specific spaces. Next slide. So with the plaza early on, you know, we really worked with a lot with the grading and with the architects to really figure out a way to, there's a lot of grade change in the site, I should have said from the beginning, and it's quite challenging. So we really wanted to work with, you know, the whole team to figure out a way to create a plaza that was really usable, you know, user-friendly, accessible, and get the best kind of experience possible. So to do that, we had to kind of deploy some different kind of landscape strategies, like using kind of stacked seating or stairs as retaining elements, using planting as buffer and retaining elements. And then because we want to use the ground plane, you know, to a large degree for flexibility and, you know, cafe seating and things, you know, using kind of larger canopy trees that create a canopy and create, you know, help us get in some of that kind of sustainability initiative, but also give us a flexible use on the ground. Next slide, please. Here you see the kind of enlarged plan of the Civic Plaza. And you know, for building A to building B along the Broadway sidewalk, there's an existing grade change, you know, it's rather significant. So along that frontage of the plaza, what we're doing, again, is using those landscape elements to create kind of a sequence of entry access points into the plaza that then allows us to create the entire, really almost the entire plaza after the first 15 feet at the same elevation of 33. So from, you know, building A, we have a set of stairs where the grades at the biggest disconnect of about 3 feet. And then in the center, there's kind of a sloping portion in between the two planters with no handrails, less than 5%. That brings us into the heart of the plaza. And then finally, as we kind of approach building B, it's flush and at the same elevation as the entirety of the plaza. So that was kind of a strategy we set up early on. And I think it's a really great strategy that helps us kind of have that kind of, you know, universal kind of access to the plaza at the same elevation. You'll also notice that there's a very intentional approach here where, you know, we're using the perimeter as a space to kind of create clear circulation and sight lines to the retail, but also that gives us the opportunity to kind of have generous zones for cafe seating and spill out for food and beverage uses. And that kind of then kind of sets up this really nice central kind of heart to the plaza where we have this kind of strong bosque of trees and then, you know, planted islands and different types of kind of street furniture that create spaces underneath that canopy. We're also looking at elements of multi-generational play, such as ping pong and porch swings, that can offer kind of different uses when the plaza is not at, you know, at peak times, so that there's kind of another life of the plaza when someone may not want to specifically go to a specific shop or it might be at a kind of an off time. Next slide, please. This is looking at the plaza zoning and just, you know, doing our homework, making sure that we're kind of hitting all the requirements in the SCO, and we do, you know, we're not requesting any waivers for this civic space, you know, so we're looking at the tree requirements and the permeability requirements, the amount of landscape area and the types and diversity of seating, all those different things, and kind of just mapping out and demonstrating that we're complying with all of that. Next slide, please. Similarly with this diagram, we're just demonstrating in the frontage zone that we have the correct amount of seating and types of seating, with and without backs, the percentage facing the sidewalk. And then these kind of yellow zones are indicating spaces where we're kind of dedicating the percentage of the plaza edge to cafe seating. Next slide, please. This is just some imagery that kind of helps show the precedent character of the park. So, different types of paving materials at different scales and tones and bonds can help kind of delineate different surfaces like the Muse versus the Central Heart. And then, again, the elements like the stacked stone and the timber platform, which are just kind of different types of furniture elements that can create different types of opportunities, and then making sure that some elements have backs for inclusivity, comfort, ADA requirements and such. And then using, the types of furnishings that the city likes to see in their spaces and creating that kind of continuity along the street scene with the receptacles and the bike racks and things like that. And then down in that lower right corner is the multi-generational examples of that type of kind of multi-generational play that I mentioned earlier. Next slide. And it was kind of an earlier illustrative view, but it gives you a sense again of that really important connection for us from Broadway to Sewell Street, and then the kind of perimeter cafe seating and that kind of bosque of trees that kind of creates a central heart to the plaza along Broadway. Next slide, please. The Muse, again, is what we're calling the accessible space, publicly accessible space that connects the park to the plaza. And, I think most importantly, this is a 24/7 publicly accessible pedestrian footpath. It has townhouses on either side with private patios where their garden buffers are kind of creating a buffer to their private entrances in their homes, but also creating a visual amenity for the public realm where there's kind of this shared visual amenity of the planting. And then, on one end of the park end of the Muse, we have the Winter Hill Community Room as an anchor, and then the plaza on the other end is an anchor. And we're providing these kind of civic seating moments to kind of help further create kind of different types of moments and opportunities along that space. Next slide, please. So here's a plan of that where you can kind of see the plaza on one end and the beginning of the park on the other, community room anchoring that kind of bottom left corner and the retail on the kind of upper right. And you can see the little paved patio zones. This is sloping, but there's no handrails. The slope is under 5%. It's quite gentle actually. And the width is really generous, kind of varies between 8 and 12 feet. We've looked at an appropriate kind of civic lighting strategy that'll keep this illuminated really nicely, but not kind of affect the adjacent units. And again, we have the kind of strategy of this kind of meandering triolet, which we think will be a really beautiful connective feature. It also kind of acts as a kind of a micro greenway in a way where it's really nice where we have the opportunity to connect two other green spaces. It's always nice when you can connect that. It's like helpful for pollinators and local flora and fauna and such. Next slide, please. This is an illustrative view, kind of a conceptual view looking from kind of the park end of the Muse back towards Broadway and the plaza. So you kind of get a sense of the width and the staggering planting and the meandering trees. Next slide, please. So down at Sewell Street, we had the park, which I think is a really great opportunity to deploy different types of kind of native plantings and embed lots of kind of flexible uses and play. I think I can talk a little bit about, originally, I think we envisioned this space to be a bit more passive, and then over time through, I think, community meetings and various meetings with city agencies, we were kind of led in a direction where youth play became more important and kind of embedding those elements into the space became part of the strategy, and also not only providing those elements, but in a kind of a nature play style perspective where it's kind of more interpretive and natural, and not kind of a cordoned off area, but it feels like publicly accessible, and that there's kind of interpretive uses, so it feels like it has more of a neighborhood community use versus one singular use. Next slide, please. Here's the plan of the park. You can see along the kind of left edge of the park, there's the grade change from kind of 29 up at the community room down to 26 at Sewell Street. So literally kind of connecting the two closest elevations allowed us to kind of help make that kind of step-free route through the site. And then inherently what that did is create kind of a bi-level space where we have on the right kind of a little bit of a lower kind of play-oriented plaza that can also be used for flexible uses. And you have using the grade change to kind of embed retaining seating and different types of play features for climbing and scrambling. But I can imagine those could also be used for an outdoor classroom for the community room, or you can imagine a blow-up screen or something, and those become the stadium seating for a cinema night in the neighborhood or something. But in large part, we have essentially kind of play elements kind of embedded into the kind of park scheme. Also would say that there's a really strong perimeter planting strategy where we're kind of have a specific amount of large trees that we need to plant in this space. So it's kind of what we decided to do, is create this kind of perimeter planting strategy that helps create a sense of enclosure in the park, which I think is really important spatially, but then also helps obviously screen the neighbors and creates that kind of acoustic and visual buffer. Next slide, please. Again, this is a kind of a zoning analysis that we did as part of a recent submission, and just demonstrating compliance with all these different elements. One area where there was a little bit of a discrepancy was with the landscape area. Typically, I think the FCO likes to see a kind of 70 to 100% planting. We have a little bit less than that due to the fact of providing additional paved areas for all the kind of various play elements and such. But that's something we're continuing to study throughout the design development phase. And I think there has been a waiver requested for that. Next, please. These are images of the kind of features in the park. So you can see, using natural materials was something that came out of the community meetings where we really want to limit the use of synthetic materials. We're using elements, natural play elements and features kind of predominantly made out of robinia or black locust wood, which is like a native North American hardwood. And then using the grade change again for these kind of elements like slides and kind of boulder scrambles as a way to express, the kind of geology, like kind of a narrative of geology of the site, but also a kind of a fun way to retain and create kind of social seating opportunities, play opportunities. And again, some of these other elements like the playhouse, the community table, and different elements that we have kind of embedded into the design. Next slide, please. These are examples of the kind of furnishings. Again, this kind of retaining seat walls with timber caps, kind of timber benches with backs, creating a diversity of seating types. There'll be a community bulletin board and a water fountain for drinking, kind of planting and perimeter fencing. You have the bike racks, receptacles, and all the typical park signage that will kind of live at the entrance, both entrances to both the park and the plaza, to make the kind of public accessible nature of it very, very clear to the community. Next slide, please. There's a kind of most current rendering, conceptual rendering of the park, where you can see the path along the right, which is kind of the step-free route that leads up to the Muse, and the LA in the background, and then in the foreground, this kind of play-centric lower plaza with the theater seating. You can see all those various elements kind of embedded into the landscape, the playhouse tunnel and slides and various stacked stone for scrambling and social seating opportunities. Excuse me. Next slide, please. Just wanted to quickly touch on the fact that we do have that Temple Street passage. And, you know, essentially there is quite a lot of grade changes, about 10 feet from the community room up to Temple Street. But we feel, you know, confident that we've been able to create a really strong connection through there. That's very legible, has, you know, border planting. It's all ADA kind of compliant with handrails, the ramp aspect of it. And we've, you know, looked with the lighting designer to create a kind of a layered lighting approach, both within the landscape and on the building, to create a very kind of a safe, legible route through there. Next slide, please. This in plan, you can kind of see along the top portion of the page, kind of a retaining wall adjacent to the private residences to the north of the page, and then there's kind of generous path connecting through down to the community room, Temple Street, and then the adjacent, you know, planting on the page south. Next slide, please. And that's an elevation through there that kind of shows you the dramatic grade change. But again, we think with the lighting, the planting, materiality, that the quality of it will make it quite a viable route. Next slide, please. You know, a large part of this project is, you know, looking at the sustainability and planning goals from a landscape perspective. We've worked a lot with, you know, urban forestry, looking at the trees, the tree types that they recommend, and kind of getting some feedback on kind of local, you know, some selections that, you know, actually we've had this experience, might try this. And so this kind of coordination aspect with, you know, urban forestry, which is really helpful. And, you know, looking at a lot of kind of wild character for plants, not a very neat kind of manicured landscape, but more of a natural kind of regional appropriate native and adaptive plant selections, you know, thinking about pollinators and bird friendly habitat and, you know, drought tolerance and all these different things that we have kind of identified on the left as kind of targets for how we're approaching the kind of planting design. Next slide, please. You know, part of that we have to identify kind of environmentally throughout the site, the sun and shade zones, and the different, how those different types of, you know, plantings and goals can kind of be accommodated in these different types of spaces. You can see that the park is, you know, the southern exposure is much sunnier than, you know, the Muse, for example, is much shadier, and the park or the plaza is kind of half and half. So kind of playing up on those that help us create kind of a diversity of plant material, putting the right plants and trees in the right places helps kind of create the spaces and the narrative and experience as you kind of go through these different places. Next slide, please. This is just kind of demonstrating with the light, some of the different types of plantings that would be characteristic from the park to the plaza. So, you know, with the park being more full sun, there'll be kind of these naturalized, kind of more meadowy plantings, and then we have plantings in the terraces of the grade changes. And we have a lot of elements that are embedded in the planting, so there's kind of immersive quality to that. You know, and the Muse being more of a kind of a full shade, part sun space, there'll be a greener, kind of a darker green, more evergreen character to that. And then the plaza is really about like consolidating the planting into those islands. And it's really mostly about the kind of tree canopy strategy and the quality of that bosque. Next slide, please. This is just an example of some of the tree selections to date in the park. And you see this kind of quite a mixture of different types of parkland native, larger tree species, and they'll have their own kind of wonderful characteristics with different types of leaves and fruits and flowers and bark textures. And so there's kind of a really exciting mix of trees happening at the park. Next slide, please. Whereas in the plaza, you know, we predominantly have this kind of bosque where we're using larger shade structure trees like predominantly oaks to create the bosque. And those will all be clear stem, so you can have clear sight lines underneath. And, you know, that'll create like a really important moment there. And then within the planting beds, looking at just some different specimens to help support those, like Nissa and tulip tree, for example. Next slide. And then connecting the two through the muse, we're looking at, potentially like a ace rubrum or red maple that will create a really brilliant kind of fall display, but I think a really beautiful moment that creates kind of this meandering triolet that connects this really naturalized park to a more structured civic plaza. Next slide. And all this to say, the idea of cultivating habitat is quite important for us. And, it's not just about the plants, but it's also about the experience. And, with all the technology today with plant apps and ID, the educational overlays, and also the environmental benefits of slowing down rain and stormwater retention, there's just so much happening in these civic spaces that's so important. We just wanted to create this slide to help acknowledge that. I think that will take me to handing over to Jesse, if I'm correct.
Great. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, wonderful. Well, good evening, members of the board. Morgan, I appreciate you doing most of my job in terms of articulating the merits and the plan for the retail, which, we've found in our work, a good civic plan, a good public realm plan, almost always does the job of justifying retail moves. And I think it is very much the Mark Development and their team's approach and the Grafito approach to think about ground floor activation as both being about the public and the private realm. And I think what you're seeing in this plan is a lot of work and a lot of attention to detail to think about how these two elements relate to one another. And it's been a really exciting project for us to work on to date, and we're very pumped to make it real. So only 3 slides here, but I think I would emphasize on this first slide as we kind of go back to one of the slides that Morgan hit on in the middle of his presentation is, again, we've always aimed to understand this plaza as it relates to the retail and vice versa, and recognize when done right, they really amplify each other. And having this civic plaza and looking at it in context of the challenging grade condition on Broadway really gives us a great opportunity to allow retail tenants to spill out into this civic plaza in a way that would be quite challenging, but for this public realm design. And again, it's a major attribute of the project. In addition to also not sacrificing activation all along the Broadway edge. I mean, when you look at this in plan, other than a relatively small lobby, it's all active use on the Broadway edge. And we'll get into kind of how we're thinking about that active use. But I'd also just flag, to preempt any questions, we've also reserved some space for arts and creative enterprise use, which you can see off of Temple Street, and held space on the ground floor with a connection to the street, but also recognize that many of these arts and creative enterprise uses just aren't as dependent upon being in the most heavily trafficked pedestrian locations, for example, on the major frontage of a project, and have planned accordingly. Next slide. So, as we always do in our projects, I think local inspiration is really important. And, the reason we have some of these pictures is to help emphasize a few key things. The first one being, and I think you'll see this as you look at the visuals here, is a very deliberate approach to embrace smaller spaces. This is certainly not Assembly Row. It's a much different urban environment. And to really fit in the fabric of this urban environment, we're thinking about smaller premise sizes, of course. It also gives us the opportunity to do more retail deals, which we think is really exciting and certainly fits within the character of the existing street. The other thing that hopefully some of these pictures show, and it goes back to my point about the plaza and so much of what Morgan has spoke about, is thinking about spill out, actual spill out from the retail premises to not to the frontage, but to the side. We included a couple of great comps from Somerville. One is Revival over in Davis Square, the way in which they spill out, not to the front where they are, but to the side. And then Remnant Brewing in Bow Market, which some of you may know, also has a section that doesn't spill out in the main plaza, but actually spills out into the back. And these are really attractive spaces, really popular spaces in Somerville. And again, we always think about how this project should feel like it is part of the existing neighborhood and fit within the existing contours of the small business community in Somerville. I'd also just mention as we think about the spill out, much of it will happen in the Civic Plaza versus the street. We don't want to sacrifice visual permeability in making sure we've got glass on Broadway. People can see in and out of those spaces. We included a couple images of La Brasa down the street in East Somerville, which we think has done a really, really good job with this, a restaurant that many of you may know. And then again, trying to show visually that we're thinking about a range of different uses and really prioritizing local uses as we think about that range. And then lastly, there's a picture here. I know it's hard to see and these images are small, but many of you might frequent Ball Square Wines in Ball Square. They opened a location on Pleasant Street in Malden Center. And if you're looking for a great comp, for those of you who know Malden Center, major grade change, not so dissimilar from the environment we're dealing with Broadway. But this great Somerville-based business opened their second one in Malden and really did a nice job dealing with the grade. So if anyone's looking for kind of inspiration and a good comp for a local business that's done that, I would say go over to Malden Center Fine Wines. We go to the next slide. So I know this is very text heavy, and I know many of you who are familiar with Graffito know that some of this is immutable for us on our projects, but it is very much worth re-articulating for you all as related to 299 Broadway. I'd kind of pull out 3 bullets here. The first one being the second bullet. You know, providing space for graduates from some of the most special spaces throughout Somerville, whether it's Bow Market or Nibble, which is an initiative from the Somerville Arts Council, or even the Farmers Market in Union Square, has been a priority of ours. And in doing all of this, we've certainly been approaching the retail like the rest of the project through the lens of equity. How do we prioritize doing deals with female enterprises, Black and brown owned businesses? And I think that pursuit is going to be tethered back, not just to the way we design spaces and size spaces, but the way we think about our marketing, the way we think about our transactions. And this is all work that we've done to date and are really excited to continue doing once this project comes out of the ground. And then the last 2 bullets I'd emphasize would be, you know, kind of the third to last, this holistic approach to thinking about the site as related to architecture, edge condition, wayfinding, signage, public realm programming, a lot of those multi-generational activities and uses that Morgan referenced, and just really thinking about the public realm as a canvas to enhance the retail and vice versa, always been kind of at the heart of the way in which we've thought about this project. And then lastly, something that has been ongoing and we continue doing more, look forward to continue doing more of, is just engaging with the local community. The retail market is changing really, really rapidly. In my relatively brief career of 20 years or so in this space, the amount of change that's happened in 3 years is it's hard to quantify. We see rate change in retail continuing, and that's why the connection back to the community, continued community engagement and feedback is going to be really important for us to continue to understand what it is the residents in this neighborhood want and need. You know, in the last slide, we showed a picture of a great market in Cambridge that's only 1,500 square feet. We've already heard through the community process that residents want to see a small format market or grocer. We've heard bike shop, we've heard additional food and beverage, we've heard gift shop, and that engagement will continue. And I think for any successful and healthy retail project, although we're going through the official public process now, that dialogue with the community really has to continue and be conducted in earnest all the way on through. So I know that was quick. Really excited, like I said, about the project. Happy to stick around and answer questions, but I will kick it back to Adam to close us out.
Thank you so much, Jesse. So that is the end of our presentation. I think that's the end of our presentation period for this project, because we've done some deep dives into the various aspects of it, but we have the entire team here tonight to respond to questions and comments, Madam Chair. So thank you very much for hearing us out yet again.
Thank you very much. And thank you, gentlemen, for your presentation. Nice and clear and to the point. I like it. So our next feature, I guess, on the agenda is to go to the public and see if they've been listening and have some comments that or questions that you guys can go away with. Charlotte?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Hi, are we going to go to the public participation now? Is that what you'd like?
Yes. We didn't formalize it earlier, but I'm assuming you would like the 2-minute timer to be in place tonight.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. I will get that ready. For anyone who hasn't attended a meeting before, there are 2 ways that you can let us know that you want to speak. Way number 1 is you can raise your hand. There's a little button that looks like a hand, and if you click on that, it'll let us know. The other way is you can send a message through the chat, just letting us know that you want to speak. We can't take public comment through the chat, so just keep that in mind. We will start with Casey Williams. Casey, you are unmuted.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes. Ms. Williams, I'd like to say something. This is Susan Fontano, the chair, and I hope everybody out there is listening. Anyone listening tonight, there was some confusion last week on what topics you can ask questions about. You can ask questions about anything that goes with this project. It doesn't have to be on any given night. The only comment I had last week was that there are people who have spoken about their particular concern. If you've done that, made us aware of that, we're making notes. They're part of the project, part of I just got a whole bunch of stuff today with a whole bunch of comments from people. So we get them on an ongoing basis. We're reading them, we're digesting them. So don't be afraid to come forward, but leave some good, valuable time for a new idea you might have or for somebody else coming behind you. So Casey, please go ahead and thank you for your patience.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. My name's Casey Williams. I live at 154 Central Street, so just down the road. And I just wanted to express my full and excited support for this project. I think it contributes much needed affordable housing in Somerville, and I really appreciate the focus on walkability and public space, as we've discussed today. I love the proposed public spaces in this project. The Pocket Park and Plaza are drastic improvements from the empty parking lots and essentially unusable spaces that exist on the site now. I think the scale and quality of these spaces is great, and I think this project proposes a real community asset and character of public space that doesn't currently exist in our neighborhood in Winter Hill, and it's really exciting to see this proposed. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next up is Carlos Delgado. Carlos, you are unmuted.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, hi. Excited, very excited. Carlos Delgado, 14 Jake Street. Like I was saying, excited about this project. It's just around the corner for where I live. Just a little concerned that myself and some of the guys that I work with, we was wondering through the other meetings, we was hearing many concerns about, obviously, about the parking situation. But for us, we was concerned about the construction of the project. Obviously, we want the participations. Like myself, many builders and many people who works in the trades are concerned on who is going to be building this. And we would like to see a responsible contractor doing this project. We don't want the things that happen in Assembly Square that some of us were taking advantage, and it was a lot of wage theft happening out there. Even myself, I was victim of wage theft, and we just don't want that. And we just would like to know the developer team to tell us or tell the community who is going to be building this project. A beautiful project, don't get me wrong, but we just wanted to do things right in Somerville, and that's why a wage theft ordinance has been passed in the city.
Thank you very much. Are we just gonna take all these comments tonight and then you can come back with some answers? Is that what the team would like to do, Mr. Adam Dash?
It's up to you, Madam Chair. Certainly we could answer them one at a time, or we could wait until the end and answer them all at the end tonight, or we can do it
Well, I
next
mean,
time.
some of them can be answered by giving the name right away, and some of them
Right.
are more, in depth. They got to be explained and covered. So I didn't
Sure,
know
sure.
if a question like this could just say such and such company and such this, and that goes away.
I think this one's very easy in that it's not really a zoning matter and we're not that far down the line as far as who's the contractor at this stage of the project. So we take the comment and that's really all I can say at the moment about the subject.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. All right. Thank you. Next, please.
Next up is Hala Jadhala. Hala, you are unmuted.
Hi, this is Hala Jadala. I live at 66 Hall Ave, and my family owns 11 Langmaid. I'm glad to see the retail stuff, and I agree with the last caller about you using like local people. It would be better to put the money, if you're gonna do this, put the money back into the people who live here so they can afford to stay here, who live around the development. And also, definitely your parking study. It's a way off, and you need to look into that again and make sure, because 90% of the time when I go to my mother's house, I cannot find a space. I have to illegally park because I can't walk from the handicap on Adams Street all the way down to Langmaid. So should look into that again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is Jesse Victoroff. Jesse, you are unmuted.
Hi, this is Jesse Victoroff from 22 Connecticut Ave. I just wanted to express how excited I am for this project. I'm so impressed by how much green space, walkable space, play space has been included in the plan. And I just wanted to say personally, I'm actually excited to have as little parking here as possible so we can see the shifts in Somerville towards more walkability and more public transportation. I think that's one of the most important things to me as a member of this community. So I'm just really excited about the plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next up is Seth Hurwitz. Seth, you are unmuted.
Hello.
Hi, everyone. Hi there. Thank you for providing another presentation on the project this evening, and ZBA, thank you for hosting the meeting as well. My name is Seth Hurwitz. I live at 12 Maple Avenue, and I just want to reiterate again my strong support for this project. Like the other speakers who've spoken in favor of it, I love the emphasis on small retail spaces, the affordable housing that will be brought into the community. I really appreciate as well the presentation about the public space and the pollinator plants and so on. And I'd love to put in a plug for green infrastructure in the area as well, if that can fit within the scope of this project. We have a lot of storm overflow issues in the city, especially in this area. If there's any way to do catch basins, bioswales, anything of that nature to help with just excess rainwater, and while also adding to the urban canopy, I think that would be really wonderful. Thank you for your time, and I continue to support this project.
Thank you very much.
Next up is Lily Link. Lily, you are unmuted.
Thank you. My name's Lily Link. I also live at 12 Maple Avenue, just a stone's throw from this project. I cannot wait for the day that I get to go and visit these retail shops and enjoy the green space. As others have commented, it's something we're lacking in this neighborhood, and the opportunity to also combat the urban heat island effect that Broadway suffers from. There's so few trees on the stretch of Broadway from McGrath to, I mean, gosh, really just all the way down Broadway. There are so few trees. I walk up and down Broadway every day to run various errands and get to the Orange Line and to the buses that I take on a daily basis. And so I'm really excited for everything that this will bring, the housing, the retail, the green space. And I agree with an earlier speaker that if we really do want to accomplish the climate goals we've set out as a city, we cannot make it easy and comfortable to drive. We need to make taking public transit, walking, biking, and other forms of micromobility the most efficient and the most enjoyable form of transportation if we really want people to make that mode shift. So I am fully in support of the not offering parking to every single resident. And I also, living in the neighborhood, have found that there is plenty of parking. I think some people think that if they can't park in front of their front door, that means there's no parking, but we need to shift that expectation that folks have about what constitutes enough parking. So thank you so much for your time, and thank you to Mark Development for the incredible amount of work you've put into providing this community with an opportunity for something really special.
Thank you for your participation. Next, please, Charlotte.
Next up is Tori Antonino. Tori, you are unmuted.
Oh, excellent. Would we be able, I'm timing myself, would we be able to go to the civic space slide? Is that
We
possible?
would need to be given the screen and have the timer come off, and then Adam Benjamin would have to be able to put it back up.
Adam, I am making you the presenter. You should be able to share your screen.
Great. Any specific image in particular, Tori?
The last one was fine. Thank you for indulging me. I appreciate it. I just want to start that I am wholeheartedly in support of this project. I see this project is going, what I want it to be is the beacon for all other developments across the city. This is a game changer for us, and I just appreciate Robert Corp and his team engaging the community so much and valuing our input. So the slide I was hoping to see was the overview of the civics of the plan. Well, so basically what I'm a little disappointed of is that the amount of hardscape that is increased, and I guess this is because you went to the city and this is the feedback they gave you. You can have a very successful retail space while having passive green space. Early on, I took Robert and Adam and another person to the growing center, and the growing center would basically be a perfect fit for the size of Sewell Park. And it is like a little magical forest when you go in there. And I just see so much more hardscape that I don't understand. Like the original plan for that Sewell, for the Sewell Commons was different. So I understand the need to focus on retail, but it doesn't have to be sacrificed with, I think we have two courtyard typologies and a civic plaza. So Robert, thank you, I might be going over time. Okay, can I just, Robert, I need you to come before the Urban Forestry Committee. We are an independent body of the city, and we give fees back to PSOP and the mayor on projects like these. So I would like that to be the next step, and I'd like to show you the growing center again. Thank you very much. I support this.
Next up is Ariel White. I'm gonna take back some presenting so that everyone can see. Ariel, you are unmuted.
Hi, my name is Ariel White. I live at 11 Hinckley Street, and I am also here to express my excitement about this project. Before I moved to Magoon Square, I lived on Central Street, right near Broadway, across from the temple for a long time. And for the entire time I've lived in Somerville, that parcel has just been a hole in the middle of the city. I remember going to the Winter Hill design charrettes back in, I think maybe 2014 in the storefront that's now Winter Hill Brewing. And I remember back then hearing George Proakis talking about the back and forth with this landowner and how the city wanted to make sure something great would go in here. And now, you know, finally here we are almost 10 years later, and something great could go in here, where we've just heard about how responsive this team has been to neighborhood requests and making this fit into the space as it currently is, you know, is surrounded. And this is also, I think, just in time, given the housing crisis that we face in this city. I mean, I'll note that back when I was going to those meetings in 2014, I was renting a one-bedroom apartment for about $1,200 a month, which seemed expensive to me at the time, but is now just unimaginably cheap given how much rents have spiraled up in recent years in the city. And so, you know, I heard some concerns last meeting about parking being tight in this area, but, you know, in addition to what others have noted about how the city is doing a lot of things to try to reduce the need to drive in this area. So, you know, by the time this project exists, there should hopefully be plenty of people not using cars as much as they might do today. Overall, I just want to really stress how desperately this housing, and particularly this affordable housing, is needed in Somerville at a time when people are increasingly getting priced out of our city. So I would really hate for us to let some concerns about the kind of daily convenience of a couple of drivers in the city outweigh this really dire need that our neighbors face for housing right now. I don't think these problems are on the same scale, and so I don't want us to lose sight of that. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Next up is Stephen Moore. Stephen, you are unmuted.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Mr. Maher.
Great. This is Stephen Moore of 36 Sewell. I'm a direct abutter and have been pretty heavily involved in the project from the get-go and even the previous iterations. 100% behind this project on a number of levels. It's high performance building being prime for my particular interests and professional pursuits. But I have a few points. So I agree with Tori about how we've gone from some softscape, which was great, to much more hardscape. Not a fan of that. I'll second the green infrastructure point. I feel like that has been talked about before, and so I think that that's probably still part of the issue. Third point is oaks. Oaks are really tall, and my hope is that there will be some coordinating efforts with abutters. I happen to have a pretty sizable solar array that would be dwarfed by the 40-foot oaks adjacent to the property. So I think that there can be a great mix of natives, and I'm certainly a fan of the oaks and the height, but I think there's a positioning, conversation, and coordination that could be very useful, not just to me, but to the surrounding community as well. The last bit is a thought on the retaining wall that runs along that Temple to the Sewell Park slope. Does that retaining wall, I know it's early days, but is that intended to remain as is? Because right now it's about 11 feet tall. It would be kind of an interesting alley to actually see people walking down there. I know that adds security issues, but right now there isn't any aesthetic value to an 11-foot retaining wall. Thank you.
Next up is Jennifer Civitello Hilario. Jennifer, you are unmuted.
Hello, I'm Jennifer Civitella Hilario. I live at 9 Bolton Street. I'm not in a butter, but I'm, commenting on concerns that I have between the quality of life and the access to amenities inside and outside that the residents in Building A will experience versus Building B. Where it applies to the outside is, I was wondering if there's a way for the residents in both buildings to access these public spaces other than through the lobby. I noticed that from Building A lobby on Temple Street to access the civic space, you would have to traverse that hill. And so I was wondering if the presenter could show where, through what other exits those residents can access the civic space other than those who live in the townhouses along the Mews.
Well, because again, we would need the screen, and I don't know if Jonathan or Morgan is the best one to answer that question. But which slide do you think would be best, Adam?
You can go to any one of the site plans. And I think Jonathan could probably
Yeah,
be.
just to address that question real quickly. So there's an entrance directly into Building A off of the Civic Plaza. If you look just north of the retail space in Building A along Broadway, it's a secondary lobby that connects into the interior corridor of Building A to provide all of those residents access to the Civic Plaza.
That's great. Thank you.
Of course.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Madam Chair, at this time, I don't see anyone else indicating that they wish to speak. I can give it another moment just to see if anyone raises their hand now, given that it's their last chance for the moment. I am not seeing anyone, Madam Chair.
Okay, well, we'll leave this portion open for a little while longer as we shift to the board now. If they have some comments or questions. And did we have somebody here tonight about the mobility? If anybody had questions on that?
Yes, we have Randy Hart, I believe, is here from VHB, who's our traffic consultant who did the traffic plan.
Okay,
I don't see him on the screen, but
yeah, that's okay, just in case for hearing and even somebody from us too. There he is. Hi, Randy. Okay, so let's open this up to the board. Catherine Garavaglia had her hand up.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I have a tangential question for the applicant team. I wasn't at the last meeting, but listened to the recording, and it sounds like there might be a lender in place already for the project. I believe most of you are aware, I'm an associate at Robinson Cole. I just wanted to confirm if we had identified lenders counsel. I just want to make sure I don't have any conflicts.
I can handle that. We do have an identified lender on the land acquisition, but not on the construction financing. And I can tell you on the land acquisition, it's not Robinson Coles.
Okay, thank you.
For the record, that was Robert Koroff. As you go on answering some of these questions, folks, would you please identify yourself? It's for the tape. That's okay. That's okay. Okay, who's next on the board? Do I see a hand? Okay, Ian Fullerton, and then Cecilia is next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have 3 questions. One is if somebody on the applicant team can speak to whether or not you've talked with Somerville Fire Department yet about service access, and if you have access points identified. And my thought is that you've done a really good job carving up the grade changes, but I wanted to be sure that the grade changes were working with their access points.
Yeah, Adam Dash. Yes, we have been meeting with fire prevention on this, and mobility is going back and talking to them again. But we have identified the points and the striping and the things that they want, and they were satisfied with it. I don't know, anyone else on the team have anything they want to add to that?
No, my understanding is we have an understanding with the fire department and a plan that satisfies them on fire access. We are going back to them now in the process of that at the request of city staff to see if some minor adjustments can be made to one of the access areas to just improve upon pedestrian access as well, while still accommodating the fire department's needs. But
Great.
it's.
Thank you, Mr. Court.
You're welcome. I'm sorry mentioning my name. That was Robert Corf. Sorry, Madam Chair.
That's okay.
My second question is, I just wanted to follow up for one of the public comments. It's probably a pretty quick answer from Mr. Barnacote about the existing retaining wall on the Sewell side, whether or not that's a new build or if that's a reuse.
We'll probably direct that to Bowler if there's somebody here from.
I don't think we have Bowler this evening, but Adam or Scott Lombardi.
I'm happy to
Zach
hop in.
Richards with Bowler is on.
Zachary's here from Bowler.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what the landscape architecture design holds, but I imagine that that wall would probably be reconstructed, right, in order to kind of work the grade change a little more effectively into,
yeah,
you know, the pedestrian amenity space.
That's correct. So the intention is that the wall facing Sewell be reduced as much as possible to maintain the slope from the back of building B to the abutters. We haven't identified exactly what that height is going to look like yet, but it will be significantly less than the existing retaining wall. And the retaining wall is in such condition that's going to have to be replaced during construction.
Agreed.
So that was Zachary Richards, and who's speaking now?
Oh, apologies. Adam Benjamin, Mark Development.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Thank you, guys. And one last question, Madam Chair. And this is probably my biggest question. I'm concerned about equity of parking applicant allotment for the low income households. And essentially, because of the wonderful new subway station that we have, we're in a metro area radius where your development doesn't require parking, which is why we have that as one of the waivers. And it's specifically requested for the market rate units, but wonderfully, the affordable units have been structured to be attractive to families, and there will be some percentage of families that need a car to function. And my concern is that because of the radius that we're in and the zoning code attached to the location, that those affordable housing units won't be allowed to apply for low income parking passes. And I wanted to find out from your team if mobility has been discussing that issue with you.
Robert Korf here.
You want me to take this one, Robert?
Yeah, I'll just say, at a high level that we would not want to exclude the ability for, we would have requested alongside the market rate the ability for affordable. But when, we communicated with staff way back on this, my understanding, and perhaps Adam Dash or Damien could speak more specifically to it, but my understanding is it wasn't a necessary waiver due to the way the current ordinance works, that, affordable units, no matter what, have the ability to apply based on a hardship, and they're routinely given in the city as a matter of policy. Did I cover everything, Damien?
Yeah, so Damien Chaviano, Mark Development. Good evening. Emily, I saw that Emily just got on. This was a critical issue for mobility. And I can tell you right now, and Emily, please jump in, it's been made very clear that there will be the same process, if not a more expeditious process for affordable housing applicants than what we're seeking under the waiver. And so we were asked to communicate that, because this question did come up in some of the comments that were emailed in. And so our understanding, not knowing the specifics, is that the proposal we're making is equivalent, but no better than what would be allowed under the affordable housing hardship variance. Is that fair to say, Emily?
Thank you, Damien. Madam Chair, this is Emily Hutchings, Planning, Preservation, and Zoning staff. I would also like to note that we have on the line Justin Schreiber, who is a member of the Mobility Division with us as well. Yes, so my understanding of our policies, and Justin, correct me if I'm wrong, is that residents of affordable housing units are already able to apply for on-street parking permits, recognizing that they have a hardship. And so they have the same, if not greater, access to these parking passes than the market rate units.
Madam Chair, this is Justin from Mobility. That's correct. There's a blanket exemption to this policy for people in affordable housing. There's just an administrative step of getting a letter from the housing division, but otherwise, anyone who needs a parking pass who lives in the affordable housing units will be able to get one.
Great. And Ian
Just
Fullerton?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Just so I am 100% clear, it's a blanket exception for any affordable housing unit, no matter what district or other regulations they would otherwise fall under for mobility, correct?
That's correct. And we asked the housing division just to sort of certify that someone is in fact a member of an affordable housing unit. So they just write a letter to parking. And I think we're planning on being able to do that at a sort of a building level rather than individually for each person in this development, because there are so many.
Great, thank you very much.
And
Thank
Robert
you, everybody.
Corfa,
Thank
if I
you.
may add,
Who's speaking?
Robert Corfa, Madam Chair, on behalf of the
Right.
app. If I may add to further all this, the affordable units have the ability, as stated, to pull parking passes at the typical cost that the city may charge. It may in fact be at no charge. We are implementing with mobility, a cost to the market rate units that we would charge, and then in turn use that money, as part of our transportation demand management plan to encourage more transit usage from our residents and our retail employees. So the affordables end up being a lot better off than the market rates here on the economics as well.
Okay. Anybody else on the board? I think Cecilia, you're next, hon.
Yes, I also had a mobility related question. This is for people with disabilities. Specifically, do you have a plan of where on the street there are accessible parking spots? I don't recall if I saw that in any of the plans. And then secondly, for example, if someone is living in one of the units and they're in a wheelchair, and they're primarily relying on ride sharing or taxi. I did see ride sharing parking spots on Temple Street, but I'm not clear about whether the curb is going to get modified so that if you're in a wheelchair, you'd have easy access to be able to go in and out of a car. And also just generally whether there was any consideration given at any time for having one or two handicap parking spots on the site.
Thank you.
Well, do we have the ability to put up, Robert Korf on behalf of the applicant here, do we have the ability to put up the curbside management plan, Adam?
Just bear with me 1 second here.
And then Randy, I'll ask that maybe you help us navigate it in regards to the handicap.
Sure. I don't
Sorry
want
to put you on the spot, but.
So my recollection is that along the site frontage, there is not a designated accessible space. However, on site, as part of the 6 spaces adjacent to us for the existing retail, we are designating one as accessible with the revisions that are proposed. And that's, Justin, feel free to chime in if I've misspoken, but I don't recall there being one along the site frontage.
This is Justin. That's my understanding as well. And then just for clarity, the rideshare vehicles, Uber and Lyft, those folks can use loading zones as well. So there's there's no designated rideshare space, but there is space that they can use. We sort of prefer in mobility not to have a lot of different specialty spaces. The loading zone can serve regular pickup drop off or Uber Lyft pickup drop off. It can sort of serve lots of different short-term uses like that.
Who's speaking?
That was
Yes.
Justin Schreiber from Mobility.
And Randy Hart from BHB beforehand.
Yeah, I got Randy. Justin, so you're saying all along Broadway, there is no parking at all, handicapped or otherwise, right?
There are a few, existing conditions today. We've got a bus stop, and I actually believe it's
No, I'm talking about when your project's done. I know it's there today. I'm talking, this is Susan Fontano. I'm talking about when your project's done, if it were to be built today on Broadway, is there gonna be parking, public parking on the street?
Yes.
You know that.
This is Randy Hart. There are 7 proposed on-street metered parking spaces along the site frontage, but none of them so far have been designated as ADA compliant. The only ADA compliant relative to the site is the very first space as you come off of Broadway into the site adjacent to the liquor facility.
On Temple Street.
Not on Temple, but in the interior. Can you highlight that, Adam? Yep, right there.
Oh, the spots that, yeah, the ones that are attached to, connected to that building, but it's not their building. I get it. So you come up Broadway, there's just regular parking there. And then you come up and where those slots are across next to the building, there is one there. And what about if okay. And then when we go any place then on, in front of any other parts of Temple or on Sewell Street? Do you have a slide that shows parking?
I don't have one handy. I could go back into the inventory to see if there are any designated spaces. There very well may be, and we have that information. It's just not in a format that I can grab very quickly, but I'll try to do it as we're talking.
Okay, great. Cece, do you have anything else you wanted to ask? Did they answer your question?
I mean, it did. I would like to know more about what's available on street and whether the city is considering adding some handicap, parking spots.
I did as well. That's why I piggybacked.
Yeah, I do just generally find the strategy a little bit unkind towards a person with disabilities. Is very, not everybody can use a bicycle. And it's, if somebody is parking temporarily in this one handicap parking spot and then somebody else who's disabled needs to get into a ride share, it's not, how are they going to get in and out of a car? And also if you're if you're in this spot, is the path from these, short-term parking spaces to each of the buildings also accessible along the entire route? I imagine it probably is, but I would like to confirm that as well. Like if you're in building B, I guess you have to come down the sidewalk through the mews, down the sidewalk, and then up the driveway in order to get to somewhere where you can, get onto a ride.
Madam Chair?
Yes, please. Is this Justin?
No, Robert Korf on behalf of the
Okay,
applicant.
Robert. Yes, please. Yep.
I just had a thought. I wanted to ask the question of the team. I noticed on the curbside management plan that you had up on screen, Adam, that on Broadway, there was a fire hydrant. And I think there'd be an opportunity there, perhaps, if we could move that fire hydrant, maybe closer to the intersection of Grant, to create an additional stall, which we could dedicate as handicap, maybe.
This is Adam Dash. Robert, we'd already talked with fire and shown them the locations of the proposed an existing fire hydrant and they were okay with that, that would be a whole discussion with them to move it.
Okay, we're
All
talking about feet.
There is a loading zone though. There is a loading zone I saw on there on the street in front of building B. So I suppose, as Justin Schreiber had said, that the
Could serve as
the loads, the rideshare folks could service building B from that point.
So,
Madam Chair,
it would be up to mobility. You could always take, one of the parking spots there that being shown and dedicated for handicap. I don't know how mobility would feel about that. But I too, I'm sensitive, Board Member Daglian, to everything you're stating. And I do have some good news on the handicap topic, and that is we're pretty sure that Beacon's done a great job of upping their game, and the percentage of handicapped accessible units in their building will grow from 5 to 10%. We're in discussions now with staff on that. So from that perspective, I point that out just to let you know we are focused on handicap.
Mm.
And we're doing the best we can here without having, any on-site pavement to serve for parking, other than those 6 stalls that you see up against the liquor store building.
okay. So I think I understand that Justin Schreiber is our mobility person from the city. Do I have that right?
yeah, yes, Madam Chair, this is Justin Schreiber. I can try to answer some of those questions.
Okay, or well, it seems that a couple of folks had some comments on it, so, I mean, I know we've got some more stuff coming up against us even the next meeting, but maybe that's something that you can delve into a little bit, if not right now, but, do your homework type thing and be prepared for some more questions about this and show and tell if possible.
This is Justin. That sounds fine.
Okay, great. To Charlotte, for some strange reason, I've lost my screen. I'm only looking at Ann Brockelman. Can you maybe help me with that? No offense, Ann.
Madam Chair, can you see the upper right corner of the screen?
Yep.
If you, the middle button, the box, if you click that, that may fix it.
No, just flipped it over. Wait a minute, let me see. No. Let me try another one. Find view. Let's see something else. Sorry to do this, folks. No, it's not. I've tried. No.
Adam, could you share your screen? It doesn't really matter what you put up, but that can kind of force screens to go full screen.
It appears that
Susan, does
Susan
that
has
help?
a connection problem.
I believe Susan's frozen. This is Katie.
It seems like you're right. We can pause until she comes back on. Susan, can you hear us? Susan, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you now. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry. It's still, my camera's still not right. Let me see. Sorry, folks. Okay, here we are. Thank you. I apologize for technical difficulties. Okay. So, I was saying about the mobility issue, the handicap parking in general. We'll need to see some more slides pertaining to that, if we can do that at some point. Who else would like to speak? Catherine Garavaglia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have just a general comment and then a question for the applicant team. The parking conversation is an important one, and I think it's good that we're really talking about it a lot. In the recordings and today, I've heard a lot about other projects and trying to make sure we have a continued push for less parking. It's my understanding that the reason this project switched to having no parking was there's asbestos on the ground and it would cost $18 million to remediate the land before you even start any other construction. I think that's a really important fact that we all need to be mindful of as we start thinking about best parking versus what we can do to get a project like this in the city. This may not be the answer for other locations, but this seems like a reasonable one to me for this location, given those facts. Another another resident brought up a conversation about drainage in the area, and I apologize to the applicant team. I am sure you have gone over this, but there were questions about green infrastructure and catch basins. Is there a plan for drainage and stormwater runoff? Because this is uphill and all of the water flows down towards Marshall, towards Gilman Square, and there's significant flooding that occurs in these areas. Can someone just remind me of the situation?
Yeah, this is Adam Dash. I would think I was going to point it right over to Zachary, our civil engineer. Yes.
Thank you, Adam. Zachary Richards with Bowler, the site civil engineer. I guess big picture, our approach here, it's almost all impervious today. So I know that there's been a lot of discussion about green space. I think it's actually great to see some of the green space that's been incorporated already as part of the plans, and that inherently will be an improvement, right, and a reduction in stormwater runoff. We're a little early in the design still, obviously, but essentially the plan now is to incorporate a number of catch basins, new catch basin structures, drainage structures, get that stormwater runoff into a number of subsurface detention systems that we have proposed, and then ultimately a treatment unit before it gets discharged out into the city infrastructure. The city requirement is to reduce peak rates, not just reduce peak rates, but match the pre-existing 10-year storm needs to be the post-development 2-year storm. So you're greatly reducing those peak flows of runoff. To reiterate, as you mentioned, there is contamination at the site, right? Asbestos that we're dealing with. So unfortunately, it's not anticipated that we can infiltrate on site. But through these detention basins, we are looking to greatly reduce the amount of stormwater runoff that leaves the site.
Great, thank you.
I don't know, Zachary,
Thank
you also
you,
want to talk
Catherine.
about, is Adam Dash going to talk about engineering's response about that waiver condition being removed?
Sure. I think based on some latest correspondence, it sounds like we conservatively requested a waiver for the volume reduction from the 10-year to the 2, which we understood to be part of the city requirements. But I think the engineering department made a determination that waiver is not actually required. So I think that's the clarifying item Adam was looking for.
Yeah, it's Adam Dash again. That's waiver number 30. We will be amending to remove that based upon the city engineering staff's statement that we don't need it.
Great. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Zachary.
Sure.
And thanks for the question,
Madam Chair,
Catherine.
one more thing, if I may. Zachary Richards with Bowler. Just wanted to clarify on the green infrastructure comment, which I know is part of that question. We'll be looking as design advances to try to incorporate some of that where we can. But again, I think the challenge here is some of the environmental concerns that may limit our ability to do some rain gardens or swales or more of the green infrastructure approach, but we will definitely keep that in mind. Thank you.
Ann Brockelman.
Thank you. I think it's a good segue to one of my questions. It is tangential, but since the focus today is on green space, and you've seen, you've shown us a lot of beautiful renderings and a very lush green landscape. Just for our understanding and comfort, what sort of effort is needed to establish all those trees and plantings? Is it temporary irrigation, permanent, and then what's the ongoing maintenance effort throughout the life of the building, for the next 50 years of a project with so much greenery?
Morgan?
Yeah, this is Morgan Barnacote. I can speak a little bit to the efforts to establish the planting. Somebody else might be able to speak a little bit more into the maintenance perpetuity plan, but yeah, definitely there's, like, for the trees, especially where we have trees planted in the ground, there's a specific amount of like soil volume that's required for the rooting to be, healthy and have the space it needs for the tree to grow, like it was in like a natural planting environment. Or so, we've worked through the Somerville zoning ordinances to ensure that we have the required amount of soil volumes for each tree. So there's a specific criteria that we need to meet, which is in the diagrams that we, I think it's a drawing that's was submitted in the comprehensive permit called the soil. It was a soil plan effectively. And then where we have like planting beds, we make sure that we have the right type of amended topsoil, and then subsequently where we have different types of plants, so we have the correct depth, for, something like a tree, we need to have 36 inches. Typically where we have like, a shrub, it might be kind of 18 to 24 inches versus perennials, maybe down to 12. And so there's a range of approaches like that. And yes, I mean, typically, the unique thing about this project they took away when the parking went away, it's all at grade now. So the question about irrigation, I think, is a good one. Typically, we do, like to use irrigation in perpetuity to help, keep the planting material kind of in a robust state. We're not at a place in the design where we've kind of gone over that level of detail, but I think that's something that we would probably look to study for this site. And then in terms of like the maintenance of like pruning and stuff, I'm not entirely sure, but I'm sure there'll be some type of maintenance and management practices set out in perpetuity to make sure that, trees and different things aren't growing into buildings and they're maintained properly, and there's not material that would like fall on people in terms of health and safety and those types of things. Does that help kind of answer some of that, or?
Yes, it does. I'm just not familiar with how it works at a private development level. Is there a maintenance plan as as trash collection that's part of building maintenance? It's more a general question, right? The landscape does need to be taken care of and maintained, and I mean, we know that even public parks and playgrounds, right, they do come in and mulch every spring, or there is trash collection. It just looks so beautiful, but I know it's not easy to actually get it to that level, right? That's not day one, the renderings, and then just to make sure that it is taken care of.
So Ms.
Who
Brockelman,
on the team can answer this?
I'm sorry, this is
usually
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, go ahead.
No, I'm looking to see somebody like Damien. I mean, when any projects we've had in the past, whether not voting, but it's all already planned, delivered, contract for the management of the building usually handles the subcontractors for trash, for the land, for the maintenance. So that's what I think you're looking for, right, Ann? On a day-to-day basis, once this is built, is everything going to be maintained? And
Yes,
who's
and
responsible
again,
for that?
So,
I know
Right,
it's
Ann?
outside, yes, I know it's outside the zoning purview, but I think it's just establishment expectations, and that
Yeah,
the
just
public
a question, yeah.
enthusiasm will be carried out that, 10 years from now, it's going to look like what you're showing us.
Yeah, so Madam Chair, if I may, this is Damian Chaviano
Damian.
from Mark Development. We self-perform the management of our properties, Ms. Brockelman.
I
And
see.
so we have scenarios as the one you're describing here, where there's public space on private land. And what we will have to do here, and I think you're highlighting it, and it's an important point, there's going to be significant irrigation and upkeep costs for a space of these scales, particularly the number of spaces and the way they've been compartmentalized to keep them at a caliber that we would want as property owners. So we routinely bring in landscape contractors. We run on an annual management plan. That's for everything from landscaping to snow removal. Trash is typically dealt with through a separate vendor. But we run all of that through the property, and those are all costs incurred by the private development. And we typically, come to certain expectations with a municipality. I'm not sure how Somerville handles it as it relates to, the lifespan of certain trees under a warranty period. And so that, there's an expectation, but that is something that's critical for us to the success of the property. And it's something we spend a lot of money and time on, and this property will be at the top of the scale, quite frankly, given the magnitude of the spaces you saw tonight.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, Ms. Brockelman, this is Emily Hutchings. If I may, I can add to that.
Please do, Emily.
So for public spaces that are on private property, it is a fairly standard condition that applicants establish maintenance and operations plans for those civic spaces. This is typically done at the building permit level. These plans must be reviewed by relevant staff, at a minimum public space and urban forestry staff. Review them very carefully. They must approve them. So it's something that you might expect to see in proposed condition language once those are made available. And it is a fairly standard condition for any civic spaces, publicly accessible spaces on private property.
Thank you very much for that information. Are you happy, Ann? Did I answer your question? All right. Anybody else on the board? Raise your hand, please. No? Okay, great. So I guess the next step is I would like, a lot of people stole my thunder asking the questions, and I appreciate Catherine commenting on the carcinogenics and the parking and the expense and stuff like that. And, it's good that we have these sessions. And I like that it's virtual now, so many people at home can chime in and listen in on this, because they have questions that you folks have the answers. And some of the questions, after you get the answer, you think to yourself, I don't even believe I forgot that, or didn't think of that, or, it's like the right hand knowing what the left hand's doing. So I appreciate you guys all coming on. Not all project presenting people do this. We're getting to know you. We like you. We like what we're hearing. And I like for the public to have their say. And I'd like to say to Charlotte, did anybody else come on board from the public tonight that would like to say something?
Madam Chair, I can give everyone a moment to raise their hands if they've lowered them. I'm giving it another moment.
There seems to be more people now than there were earlier. That's why I asked.
I'm not seeing anyone else indicate that they wish to speak.
All right. Well, we're keeping the public portion open anyway, but I just wanted to make sure there was anybody there. And anybody on the board have a comment, you can raise your hand, and or the presenting team, if you'd like to say something else before you go tonight, raise your hand, or Adam, what's the pleasure of everybody? Anybody want to say something? Raise your hand.
Well,
No.
it's Adam Dash again. I think we've presented everything we have to present on this project from
Yeah.
beginning to end on this, and really at this point we're here to answer questions and that the board members and the members of the public may have, because we have nothing left to show.
Okay, great. So we're gonna go and do our homework and go through any of questions or answers that we've had. Is there any more immediate neighborhood meetings planned?
Adam Dash again. No, Madam Chair, we've had as you know, a lot of neighborhood meetings over the last almost 2 years at this point,
Yeah.
including the required 2 as part of this process since the DRA, that pre-submittal application went in. So no, the public has been showing up quite clearly to these meetings. So this has been pretty much the public comment that we have left. And as you know, we do have certain timelines we want to wrap this up by, that we need to wrap this up by. So obviously, I appreciate the board and the staff and all moving forward on this quickly. I know we'll be back in front of you on February 1st.
Yeah.
Whether it comes, we have to come back again, certainly that is your discretion. I would think maybe the project is the project. I'm not sure we need to, but it's certainly whatever the pleasure of the board is.
Well, we're
I know you'll
scheduled for
get a
the
staff
1st.
report. Yeah.
Right, that's what we have to look at next. So we will see you on the 1st. We'll look for our staff reports. And I would just like to say that we'll continue this until we're known as anything else to say. We'll continue this till February 1st, 2023. So without further ado, could I have our clerk please make a motion?
Madam Chair, could you remind me what our next meeting date is? February something, I believe.
February 1st.
All right, Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to continue the application for 299 Broadway Street to February 1st, 2023.
Second.
Thank you. Seconded by Ann Brockelman. All in favor when you're called upon, yea or nay? Ann Brockelman,
Aye.
Cecilia, I couldn't hear you.
Yay.
Thank you. Ann Fullerton,
Yay.
Zachary,
Aye.
and Susan Fontano, yay. Let the record show it was unanimous, 5 votes. I'm sorry, Catherine Garavaglia.
Aye.
Had a lot of FaceTime tonight. All in favor, 5. Sorry about that, Madam Clerk. Let the record show it was unanimous, and we'll see everybody back here on February the 1st. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, members of the board. Good night.
Thank you, Adam. Hi, Charlotte.
Hello, Madam Chair.
Okay. Jesse's still with us. Who else? Oh, Emily, you going to stay with us tonight, or are you leaving? You are? Good
Madam
girl.
Chair, I am going to stay with you tonight. I am a senior staff representative in lieu of Sarah Lewis, who is not available tonight.
Oh, okay, great, great. So, let me see, who's here? Everybody's here? I'm excited with a full crowd. Okay, so the next thing on the agenda is other business. And Madam Clerk, we discussed earlier, we're gonna do the discussion and amendment of the ZBA rules and policy, So I guess we need to call that to order and have everybody take out their little papers.
Sure, Madam Chair, that's just we're opening this discussion, not a motion, yes? Great. Then I'd like to open the discussion and amendment of the ZBA rules and policy and procedure.
Thank you. So I guess, Charlotte, you're gonna work with us on this? Alrighty.
Yes, I have the rules on my screen, and I'm happy to bring us to any parts of it if people have discussions. I do want to note for the record that under the meeting schedule, the statement that regular meetings are scheduled on the 2nd and 4th. It should actually be 1st and 3rd. And I've made that amendment in this draft already. That is the only amendment. That's the only difference from what we sent to you all and the document that I have up tonight.
Okay, 1 second. What page are we on?
This is on page 5.
All right,
of
so
the
we're jumping to
PDF.
that. Okay. Okay, and then we'll go back starting at the beginning.
Yeah,
All right,
just noting
so
that.
Okay.
I don't have a presentation tonight. This is really more of a question discussion.
Well, that's what I was going to be very casual with everybody and just ask you, you know, we can go alphabetically or whatever, starting with, you know, like page 1 and just say, anybody have anything, you know, we don't have to read everything. We've done that. I don't know. Do you think we can just go page by page? And if anybody has a comment on that page, they raise their hand? Does that sound like something that we can do? Hello? Yes? Okay. So, all right. So page 1, general, all the authority adopting the rules, responsibilities. Does anybody have any comments on that? If you do, raise your hand. No? Good. Page 2, board organization. Anybody have anything there? I had one comment. It was down on under clerk number 3. If the clerk must perform the duties of the chair, they shall, it is the clerk shall. That was my only comment, and that's straightened out. Page 3. Page 4. Page 5. So Charlotte corrected A and B. I just wanted to make sure, and I did read it again and again. This is the lineup, and as always, we do have the discretion. And under public hearings, Charlotte brought out a point that I questioned. Under number 2, public hearings, and number 5 and 6, public testimony in favor, public testimony against. I questioned that in that we've never done that before. It's a, you know, whoever raises their hand and gets recognized. Her comment, why don't you answer that, Charlotte?
So from one of the goals that staff was thinking about as we wrote these was trying to kind of make the planning board and the ZBA and when relevant, the Urban Design Commission and the Historic Preservation Commission as similar as possible. That is where the planning board takes this approach of public testimony in favor, public testimony against. So we put it in the rules. If the board would prefer to not do it that way, we can definitely change it, but that's the starting point that we came from. It works fairly well for them. It allows for kind of easier tallying of how many people are in favor or against a project, but it's up to the discretion of the board. There's no right or wrong way to do it.
Catherine?
I feel like we get a lot of comments that are just trying to be insightful and flag issues sometimes that aren't in favor or against a project even. So I personally would struggle trying to figure out when am I supposed to talk if I was a member of the public. And then I also wanted to flag, we tend to do elected officials last for whatever reason on the board. And this has inverted that order. And I don't know if this is in favor of change or against, but here you are.
Okay, as far as the elected official, I didn't mention that yet. I should have because it was before. See how this is worded as exception of the discretion of the chair, blah, blah, blah. So what we can do is ask if they're there and if they'd like one of the past councilors always was there, but he'd say, I'd like to wait and let my constituents speak. So we can give them that courtesy. And as far as when it opens up to public testimony, what we could say, because of what you're saying, Catherine, I agree with you, is that we're gonna take anybody who's in favor first, anybody who's against last, and anybody who was not decided or is confused or has something else to say to come up next. Does that help, Charlotte?
Yeah, we can,
You know, specify that they've got a, they're there, they're listening, there is gonna be a place for you. It's not just pro or con.
have any like questions, clarifications.
Okay, does everybody hear what I'm saying with that and understand Catherine's concern and not mine? I guess so. Okay, so we'll leave it as presented and we'll try it out a couple of times. If we have any issues, we can address it. Okay. Page 6.
Madam Chair?
Yes,
Madam
who's this?
I'm sorry,
Dan
I'm still
Brockelman?
on page 5, a bit above that, the no items of business will be taken up after 10 p.m. I am glad to see a time, some reference to time on this, but what happens exactly? Do we stop the meeting or no, don't move on to the next? You know, how does that happen? Maybe at 9:30 we see how we're doing?
Well, my comment to Charlotte to see what she says, but my comment would be that we know that. Working on a particular case, if we see it's 9:30, 9:45, the chair's position would be to stop the meeting for a moment with this statement of information that due to the hour, we're not taking any more cases after 10 this evening. We must reschedule them, but we'll try and finish up this one today and we'll see how it's going. If we're there another 45 minutes, we're gonna tell them to continue. That's what I think, Charlotte, no?
So, yeah, that is generally what we're thinking. It's not a like hard stop at 10 of if we're in the middle of a case and it hits 10 p.m., we can like wrap up that case. But it's a way to manage expectations of at a certain point, kind of everyone's brain power wanes because it gets really late. And so putting something in the rules and being able to, both for all board members and any members of the public who want to look at the rules, having a kind of clear expectation of if it hits 10 p.m. and we haven't taken up your case yet, it will be continued to the next meeting, so that we're not picking up new items of business at 11 p.m. when you're never going to finish that before 11:30 or midnight.
Thank
you know, but there's also, how do you send these people away? They're going to get disgruntled. So wouldn't you think, I mean, I know sometimes we have a agenda that's overwhelming. So with this rule in place now, how does the staff think about, what do you staff think about this and how it's going to be handled nicely?
We can certainly, regardless of this rule being in place, staff certainly tries to manage agendas to keep them at a workable level so that we aren't likely to be here until 10 p.m. I don't think I'm out of bounds by saying staff doesn't really want to be here at 10 p.m. either. And if we look and see that an agenda seems to be particularly full, we can forewarn all applicants of this rule and just make sure everyone is aware that this is in place, so that sometimes you can't control how long the meeting goes, but at least forewarning everyone that, hey, this is how the board operates. Be aware of that. You may be continued if we can't get through everything by or at a reasonable hour. And we can always adopt changes, adapt as we move forward. If the board finds that this isn't working, we could change it to 9:30, we could change it to 10:30, we could get rid of it entirely. This is really just currently there's no policy about this. And so kind of picking a starting point of 10 p.m. let's try that out. We can always adapt it later.
All right, I
pretty
just wanted to
easily.
make sure, yeah. We're not anticipating, we're not anticipating disaster. I just wanted us to have a little fail-safe thing of how we'll handle it if and when it comes up. Because you have people sitting here all night long, they get all hot under the collar, and it's just so that they've come. It's easier because we're dealing virtually right now. So that's not as much of a hardship. But the day we go back to live meetings at City Hall, and people come up at 6 and sit there, for 2 or 3 hours, and then they find out we're not going to be hearing them that night. It's a good thing to just think of. Anybody else have anything on page 5 or comment
I
on that
just wanted
issue?
to make a suggestion, Madam
Page
Chair.
6. Hi, Brian.
I wanted to make a suggestion about the previous
On
item.
what?
The previous item that you
Okay,
simply put that
go ahead,
statement.
speak.
I am. Simply put that statement on every agenda. That according to rules and procedures of the board, except by a majority vote of the board, no item of business will be taken up after 10 p.m. At least they'll be forewarned, and then you can waive it if necessary.
I like it. Catherine?
Um,
Yes, Catherine?
Yes, hi. So I'm not as concerned about this, but in real court, when you run out of time and it's 4:30, court closes. I feel very confident in being able to rein that in and enforce as requested.
What is your feeling about posting it on the agenda?
I think forewarned is always great for people as a reminder, but we are a quasi judicial board and there can be a time constraint that we can work within. And I will do my best as clerk to keep it moving.
Great, great. Yeah, I wouldn't mind if it said, would not open or hear a new business after 10, just so we can not panic everybody. Charlotte, how do you weigh in on this?
I think that is a very easy thing for staff to do. And if you can see, I've added a note to remind us to do that moving forward.
Okay. And you can, I'm sure when you have your meeting tomorrow, whenever, with the powers to be, you bring up any issue we'd have. And if it's not acceptable for whatever reason, their vision, you let us know.
So
Correct?
far, all of these things have been totally manageable and easy to incorporate, and I'm surprised we didn't think of them already. But this is why we have discussions about it, because more brains is always better.
Great, thank you. And thank you, Brian. So page 6.
I do want to note that I think this was included in the rules that we sent out, but I want to highlight it because it's not the board's current practice, is that public testimony, this is, give me one moment. There we go. Written public testimony will be accepted until noon on the Friday before the hearing, unless otherwise stated by the chair. I know that all of you have busy schedules and that we sometimes are sending public comments the day of or the evening before. So this is an attempt to make clear what the expectations are of when public comments need to be given to us so that you all have sufficient time to review them before the hearing. I wanted to highlight that just because it's different from our current practice. I don't know that there needs to be discussion on it. I just wanted to make sure that everyone was on the same page.
Yeah, I'm looking at one thing. So when you send us the packets, they're getting their stuff in by noon, it'll be in our packet.
Yep, every public comment that, and
right, yeah.
once it's in the rules, we can much more easily let everyone who sends public comments after
Discipline
that
it.
point know that this is within
Yep.
the rules. You're welcome to come to the meeting and speak, but written public comment are closed at 12 p.m. the Friday before. That does not bar anyone from speaking. It just limits written public comment.
Okay. And anything else on page 6? Okay, we'll turn to page 7. Ann Fullerton.
Sorry. Under applicants, item 2 at the top, I would request we change applicants may to applicants will.
Will appear on their own behalf or be represented by an agent. Either or. Somebody's got to be there. Okay.
Madam Chair, this is Katie. If just grammatically, if we're going to put will appear, we need to have a will be. It's going to drive me bananas.
Or
Thank
will
you.
be
If we make
represented
live
by their
edits,
agent.
staff can
Got
go
it.
through and confirm that all of the grammar is correct, because
Thank you, Charlotte.
I agree. This will get a final read through.
I'm looking at continuances. I made a comment on A, and I'm trying to see one thing. The board may vote to continue the public hearing to a future meeting. Oh, it was about the monies and stuff. I'm not concerned with that. All right. Anybody else have comments on page 7? No?
I do, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Just for my own understanding, is this saying that if we as the board vote for a continuance, the applicant has to pay another fee?
So sometimes if the board continues it date certain, for example, what we did with 299 Broadway tonight, where we say we are going to continue it to February 1st, 2023, another fee is not required. Another fee is required if you continue it we're continuing it to a future meeting, period.
Got it.
That case would need to be re-advertised for that future meeting, and the applicant would need to pay to re-advertise it. So that's just what this is saying, but that's not going to apply to every case. It's only if it's continued date uncertain, or if the board for any reason expressly decides to re-advertise the case, or to require that the case be re-advertised.
Well, we had a case earlier this year, a few weeks back, and we continued. We were unhappy with some of the information we got, inspectional services, the neighborhood, the guy, all this stuff. It was like a big mix up. We didn't have direct answers for us to make our choices and our approvals. So it got continued. Finally, at the last meeting, we encouraged this gentleman to withdraw without prejudice, because this was going nowhere. So that's when the chair, whomever, can't continue the meeting for them. He can tell them, if we vote right now, it doesn't look like it's going to be in your favor, because we've all weighed in. So do we tell them they get the option to continue on their own, and there may be a fee, or B, they can withdraw without prejudice and come back with all these things or corrections?
Is there a question for me, or was that just great?
Well,
okay.
I made a statement, but the question would be then, because I know in the past, and I know we've gotten a little easier with it, and I didn't know why. In the past, we never made the request for a continuance. We would say to the agent, be it the lawyer, the applicant, the construction guy, didn't matter. We'd say, we have to pull up right now. This is going nowhere. We're ready to take a vote. It doesn't look favorable right now, which we've expressed. What's your posture? What do you want to do right now? We're not going to hear any more, no more conversation. We had this with 515. Some of them have. I mean, I can pull up a whole bunch of them that they drove us crazy. So that's the difference. That's what I'm bringing out. Right, Catherine? You're shaking your head, yes. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, got it.
Get it, Charlotte? You understand me what I'm saying? But when we get that far, we'll discuss it anyway. But I'm just saying that was what triggered it off in my mind, as well as I guess Catherine's now.
Madam Chair.
Yes, who's
Or
speaking?
Charlotte,
Right
can
again.
you remind me what the fee is? Is there a fee structure or is it just a flat?
It's currently $250.
Okay.
No, yeah. It's late, sorry. Apparently 8 o'clock is when my brain starts to turn off. It's $250 to advertise. Although there is a separate re-advertisement fee that's $350, slightly higher. To my understanding is that it's to encourage applicants to really only come before the board once they're ready to be before the board, and not come before the board and then continue and continue and continue, because that really kind of takes up the board's time, it takes up the public's time, and if they're not ready to be before the board, they should wait until they're ready to be before the board.
Yeah, I mean, this doesn't change anything, but just my thought is that it's very different, you know, for a big developer, that's like chump change. And then for a homeowner who's requesting a porch change, you know, paying that 3 times is a big hardship. So I don't know if there would be some discretion.
Well, I think at that point, wouldn't we help by picking a date that's maybe a month or 2 out so they have a specified date?
That would be within the board's discretion to do. If you continue at date certain, regardless of when the date is. For example, Hamilton Road, that was the case from 2 weeks ago. You continued at date certain to February 14th or 15th, the second meeting in February. And so that does not need to be re-advertised because it was continued date certain to a different meeting. If you had just continued it without picking a date, that would be when it would need to be re-advertised.
Okay, thank you. I didn't realize that. Yep.
Great, thank you. So on page 7, are we done with that? Yes, okay. Page 8. Oh, I had a question on that. Voting, G, number 3. In the past when we've, oh no, it is each member votes. Okay, never mind. Lost my mind. Anybody else have anything on 8? No. 9. Nope. 10. $11 and
12. It's only
12.
2 lines.
Yeah. 12. Anybody? You newbies, don't feel awkward that you can't ask a question about something if you don't understand it, or you have 2 cents to add. We welcome you. 13. 14. 15. 16. 17.
And I think that's it.
I think that's it, kiddos. Yep, that's all done. That's all she wrote.
Madam Chair, Can I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Charlotte, we were scrolling pretty quickly and I'm trying to go from memory. Is there a required format that documents need to be submitted? Does it have to be PDF or something like that?
So there is not a format that documents, there are no standards about that in these rules and regulations, but there are standards about that in the submittal requirements that are referenced by these rules. So that these rules just say, board shall adopt submittal requirements and a fee schedule for all applications to be heard. And then there's like, it basically incorporates by reference the other long document with things need to be PDFs. They need to be 8.5 by 11 or 11 by 17 or whatever, and they need to be stamped and all of those other requirements. That's not duplicated in here, but it is incorporated through reference.
I'm going to take this opportunity to, again, just express that I don't like the PDF requirement. I think it's a little difficult for a lot of homeowners. I know it's not going to change now, but it's on the record. I feel better about it.
What do you mean by it can't be changed now?
Well, I think the submission requirements are, they're referring back to another document that we don't have the ability to change. So I'm just saying I don't like the PDF requirement. I think it's hard for a lot of just regular people. They might need some assistance getting that done. The end.
So I'm asking, that's the reason I asked it, is that way Charlotte can take this comment away from tonight and speak to whomever the powers to be. Charlotte, would you do that, please?
Yes, and I will note, if any of you ever want to add something like, let's discuss the submittal requirements to the agenda, you're more than welcome to. Just let me know and we can put it on the agenda for a future meeting so that we can all come prepared and be ready to talk about it more in depth.
All right. Yeah, but what I'm bringing out is true. Again, here we go again with what type of a meeting you have tomorrow, who you talk to, you know, anybody, just say, oh, one of the things that came up, and it can go in that little folder of miscellaneous things that the next time someone's sitting around and looking at, you can talk about, they can talk about. Okay, so.
I'm sorry, can I add something?
Who's that? Ann Fullerton? Oh, no, Cecilia? Yeah,
Yes,
go ahead.
yeah. I'm sorry, can we go back to page 6? Public hearings, item 5B, number 1, of dialing public comment only being accepted until noon on the Friday before. What was the thinking behind that? Is that in order to get us?
Where are you?
Page 6, public participation, item 5, subsection B1. I'm sorry if you already had a conversation about this, but I just find
Why don't you clear that up? Clear that up for Cecilia?
Yeah, it just seems like limiting or discouraging public participation is a little bit unfortunate. Sometimes people look at something, you know, over the weekend before, and then they'll realize oh, I'm too late to submit a public comment.
So this would only apply to written public comment. It would not
includes
apply.
Emails?
Yeah, so it really, I don't know that we get any like mailed snail mail letters. So it's really emails. It would not apply to someone coming to the meeting and speaking. That's just not affected by this at all.
But what's the point of restricting it?
Because we don't get to read it. We don't get to address it because we don't see it. A lot of people are working, they don't even got the time. Some of these are just 1 or 2 come in, but there are times we have big cases that we've got 30 and 40 emails And and then when they come to the meeting, we didn't get a chance to read it or see it, and they take umbrage at that. That's why the board, the staff usually advises people of that, and then they're welcome to come to the meeting and present it to us themselves. That we didn't neglect them purposely, which just that people didn't get to it.
Madam
Am I
Chair.
right, Charlotte? Yes, Catherine.
Cece, I'd like to also remind just everybody, these meetings have been advertised and the materials available to the public for a good chunk of time before then. So we're just setting a deadline that way that we as the board have time to read, review, and reflect. So if we get all of the comments by Friday, that gives us the weekend to get through them before our meeting. It gives us time to make sure we're evaluating and giving everyone the time they deserve. If they don't get a written comment in by email or other means, they're welcome to come to the meeting and voice their concerns, and we will still be able to hear them live.
Okay.
I have a question. Charlotte, when you receive stuff after noon and you've closed up a package and done it, don't you usually forward us them anyway in a separate package?
So that's what we've been doing currently because there isn't any, there are no standards that I can find, at least in our rules, about the deadline for public comment. So we've been forwarding it up until I close my email to prepare for the meeting, which varies what time it's at, but it usually is somewhere around 4:30. So that is what we've been doing currently. Under this, if these rules are adopted, this is another thing that we could put on the agenda to let everyone know, and possibly also on the legal notice to just forewarn people 2 weeks in advance. Hey, make sure you're paying attention because this is the deadline for public comment. But if we adopted these, we would let everyone know, hey, the deadline was 12 p.m. on Friday. If you'd like to give public comments, you're welcome to join the meeting at X time on X date. But make sure that they're aware whether or not their comments are being shared with the board.
Yeah, I like Cece is bringing up the point that you don't want to shut anybody out. And yeah, Ann Brockelman.
I mean, I think it just depends on the way staff handles it, right? I mean, I don't mind things being forwarded to me, but sometimes Wednesdays are crazy and I will not have any time to do any DBA until I slide into my seat at 5:45, get on Zoom. So I think you might say it's not guaranteed, you know, that the board will have read it, something like that. I don't know if you bounce it back to reject it. I don't think you need to reject it, but so it just depends on how you handle it, Charlotte. Even with the city councilors, right? They used to email us the day of long comments and, you know, with like 10 cases, here's how I feel about this case, this case, this case, this case. And we come in the meeting, we haven't read it because we've been at work all day.
Yeah.
But you could say would not guarantee that the board will have read it. I don't know how you what others think. I don't think you need to reject it or not accept it, but
No, that's my my comment is that I don't want it to be totally rejected. But how do we get the word out? Yes, Catherine.
I'm in very firm disagreement with this because I think it creates opportunity for there to be perceived preference for some people's comments and other issues that we may not be expecting. And if we do not give everybody's comments the same amount of time, or if we say, oh, well, this one we had time for, this one we don't, that's opening a whole can of worms that we may not want to deal with. I think a firm rule of we either take them all or this is the time and after that we don't needs to probably be the policy.
I will also note, and Emily, please chime in if you disagree, if there isn't a deadline and that the deadline, maybe the compromise is not Friday the the week before, but Monday, like that is totally flexible and really up to the board. But if there is, so the concern that I'm trying to voice is not all of the board members having reviewed the same information prior to the meeting. If some board members have time to review comments and other board members don't have time to review comments, not everyone is operating based on the same information. And that's kind of one of the things that we want, that we really try to make sure everyone is operating on the same information. You're all deciding from the same base point. So not having a deadline and letting applicants know, hey, we'll forward it, but it's not guaranteed it's going to be reviewed, may cause challenges. I'm not sure, but maybe.
This is Emily. That I fully agree with Charlotte. I think setting a specific deadline not only sets an expectation for members of the public, that they can better understand, okay, this is when I need to get written comments in to ensure that they will be provided to and received by the board, but it also sets an expectation for board members when they can expect to receive written comments, to know that they won't be getting comments at 5:30 the day of the hearing. And so they don't have to be checking their email constantly. They know that all information, all written information relevant to the cases that they're reviewing will come to them at a certain time and date prior to the hearing. So I really, I like the idea of having this information also be posted on the agenda. I think having that information and other information as previously stated posted on the agenda provides some fantastic public education that is probably necessary, but the goal with this statement is to set valid and reasonable expectations, not just for members of the public, but for the board in terms of review.
I guess then I would, sorry, if I may just chime in again, perhaps going for Monday, that 2 days prior. I don't know how other people feel about that, whether that just gives the public a little bit more time.
Zach speaking. Just to respond to it, I have no objection to Monday, but I would hope that it would then be clear that we will not see comments that come after noon on Monday. Otherwise, we have the problem that Charlotte's talking about, which is some people will have a chance to read them and some won't.
Right.
So they can be held for a later date if their case is continued, but otherwise, there's just this seepage that's going to happen that will make it difficult for us all to work from the same script.
And Rockelman?
I think staff has the Friday deadline, right? So you want to be done sending us stuff on Friday. So I am going back to thinking about it more, and thank you for everyone's comments. I do agree now with a Friday, because then are you sending a batch on Friday and then another batch on Monday? Like it's 40 pages, this last case, even though it's been combined from various weeks.
I have a comment. I know there was somebody on the board before, but it still opens it up. We were always encouraged in the past to do site visits.
Yeah.
And I don't know how many of you are doing that, but you should be, because it looks different from the street than it does on, Google or Bird's Eye or anything else. So I know we're getting out more and stuff like that, and we'd like to see the sites. If you get it by Friday, you have, for those who work Monday through Friday, you have Saturday and Sunday to go out, go for a cup of coffee, jump in the car, go take a look at a couple of the properties that might be of real concern. Some of them are pretty basic and pretty easy, let's say, but others are really difficult. Thank you. And I like the Friday cutoff. me personally, my job is I don't sit behind a computer all day. I'm at a desk dealing with people. And I bring it sometimes, but it's really not cool. When I come home at night, I'm just too tired to be worrying about that on a Monday or Tuesday. Yes, Ann Fullerton. This went black and I can't get it to turn back on.
I support end of business Monday. I think that there are people out there that don't have the bandwidth to be able to respond during the work week. And you're giving them the same ability that the rest of us need to sort of collect our thoughts. I personally feel like I could absorb some extra information by end of business Monday, but beyond that, I don't feel like it would be fair to assume the board would be able to.
All right, thank you. Don't need it.
Have those comments.
Look, it's perfect. Zachary. Hi,
Yeah,
Zach.
I think that we should stick with Friday. I think the public has adequate time between the prior meeting and the next meeting to email us any statements they have, while setting a boundary for us working people with full-time jobs to use the weekend, an hour time on the weekend to review this material. And as you said, go out and actually visit the site. Yes. I don't think adding 2 extra days is really going to make much of a difference, while also allowing the public the right to speak.
Great. So, okay, so without further ado, do we take a vote on how we want this to read? Are we gonna stick with the 10 o'clock? I mean, what is it? What time is it exactly? Where are we? By noon on Friday. So all in favor of sticking with what's printed in front of us and what we've been doing? I'll go around, we'll take a vote. And I don't think we need a motion for that, do we, Charlotte? No, okay. And you know what, if you don't mind, can I have wait a minute, I got 2 people talking here. Emily, you want to say something? Emily?
Madam Chair, thank you. I'd suggest instead of taking a vote, which would need to be taken formally, you may take something like a straw poll. So you go and you ask each member what their opinion is, but it would not be a formal vote, which would then need to be formally documented and would be reflected as a vote that would need to be posted with the clerk's office.
Well, what was so this is the way it is now, right? And this is the way it's been printed.
So what you're looking for a vote would be at the end of the review of the rules of policy and procedure. It would ultimately be a vote whether to adopt the rules with or without amendments. So what I think the goal is right now is just to determine who would like a Friday deadline at noon and who would like a Monday at 4 p.m. deadline. So the Friday before the public hearing or the Monday before the public hearing. Am I correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'd suggest rather than taking a vote that would need to be done formally, you could just go through the board and ask for what is effectively a straw poll. Say, so-and-so, what is your preference? So-and-so, what is your preference? And then determine who, which date has more people in favor.
Okay, because this, as of now, is the only procedure or rule that's under question. Everything else is fine. So this is the only one. You aware of that? Yeah,
Yes.
okay. All right, so let's do that. And I take it, yes, our alternates are voting as well.
It's not a vote.
Weighing in. Weighing in. Does anybody have something to say?
Do we want?
I want to know if the alternates are going to weigh in.
Yes.
Madam Chair, I would say this is this can take the opinion of everyone on the board into account, and we can just hear everyone's opinion one by one so that we
Great.
can clearly identify what the majority of the board, which way the majority of the board would like to go.
Okay, beautiful. So, Ann Brockelman,
Yes, to keep it as written here.
okay. Brian Cook,
Keep the language as written.
thank you. Cecilia, I'm doing this alphabetically.
I have a preference for Monday, but it's not a strong preference.
All right, but that's your preference,
Yeah.
Monday. Okay. Let's see, Fontano, I stick with as it's written for noon on Friday. Fullerton,
Monday at 4 p.m.
Monday at 4. Cecilia, what did you have? Monday at what?
I don't think I had a time.
Okay. All right. Fullerton, Gaglia, Catherine.
I want to keep it at Friday at noon as written.
Okay. Fontano, Gaglia, Fullerton, and Zach.
I'll keep it as is, Friday at 12 p.m.
Okay. So we have I have 1, 2, 3, 4. What am I missing here? Did I not call on somebody?
1, 2, 3.
I
We
have
have everyone.
Brian is the same. Ann is the same. Cecilia is Monday. Ann was Monday. Zach is the same. Catherine is the same, and Susan's the same. Okay, so it's 5-2 to keep it at the 10 o'clock hour, noon hour on Fridays. Now what?
I think now we vote if we're going to approve these or not. Is that right?
I do have one other question that is the only other thing that is a point of like, I had flagged it as something that we wanted to discuss. Do we want to change this public testimony in favor, public testimony against, to either combine it into just one public testimony period or explicitly add another section that is questions, clarifications? I think any of those three approaches are fine. It's just a matter of, does the board have a strong preference to change it one way or another?
I have empathy for the staff, but I think you should just open it up to public hearing as we've been doing. Let everybody just weigh in, and you guys have to keep track, sorry to say, when there's like 3, 4, 5 people, it doesn't matter. I get your point. When there's 40 and 40 and then 30 another night. But I just assume it be the way it was. That's my 2 cents. Catherine?
I'm going to agree with you. I will leave room open that how it is written still works because it's at the discretion of the chair, and that's you, Madam Chair.
Okay. The rest of the board, please. Brian, you have a comment?
No, I agree with Catherine.
Okay, Ann Brockelman, Ann with an E.
Oh, you're
Sorry.
on mute.
Yeah,
Yeah, what?
it's up to you. I don't think you need to
So
change
let
it.
it,
I agree with Catherine and Brian, because you
all
can
right.
run it the way you want it to, Madam Chair.
DCR,
Likewise, I'm fine with leaving it.
Ann Fullerton,
No preference.
and Zach.
I agree, no further comment.
So what are we gonna, how are we gonna word that there?
So it sounds like we're going to leave it worded.
Testimony from the public.
It sounds like we're going to leave it worded as is, but since all of the order of things is at your discretion, if you want to take them combined.
Okay, so we'll leave it the way it
totally
is,
fine.
and we'll just call to whoever wants to speak.
Yeah.
All right? It's like tonight.
I
Mostly-
would, if the board, if your practice is going to be calling everyone, it would be my preference to change the language just to reflect what the board is doing so that that's clear.
Okay.
We really don't, we want this to accurately capture what the board is doing as much as possible so that it's an accurate touchstone for kind of anyone looking to understand how the board operates. As long as you all are operating legally, which the difference between these two things does not matter. My preference as staff would be just have it reflect what the board plans on doing.
And Charlotte, do you want to just limit it to saying public testimony and there you go.
Great, okay. So with the amendments made tonight, if the board is ready to vote.
Nope.
May I make one additional comment? I'm sorry, on a previous comment that while it's slightly tangential, still related to the rules. So Catherine, you noted concern about requiring PDFs for the format of documents. I would note that under these rules, applicants can request waivers from submittal requirements. So they can say, I need to request a waiver. I don't know how to make a PDF. And we can then submit that along with their application to you. So
As long
in the
as
case
there's
of a hardship, that's.
I just would hate to have an elderly resident with lack of computer skills not being able to get to the board because they don't know how to PDF. Yeah.
I completely understand. Sorry, without further ado, Charlotte, keep going.
So I think if there are no additional comments and there's nothing that I remember being a item that I wanted to come back to, if the board is ready to vote, you could vote to adopt the rules and regulations as amended during this meeting, or with the amendments noted during this meeting. Either one of those ways.
All right.
Works.
I'm ready to vote. I mean, and like you're saying, if at any given time, or if we go forward and some night there's these meetings that there's 100 people, 200 people there, and we need to segregate them a little bit or sort them out a little bit, then we can address that evening. I have been at live meetings up City Hall and up the VNA on Lowell Street that the place is packed to the rafters. And Ann Brockelman can attest to that. We're there till 12, 1 o'clock in the morning, and everybody speaking and going over 2 minutes, 3, it was like horrific. So sometimes you will have cases like that, and then we can, flex it a little bit and make it more easier for the staff people to keep up with everything. It's like tonight, we keep saying to them, what's your name? What's your name? Say your name. Even the presenting team, we all, just human nature. So yeah, I think we should go forward tonight. Vote on this and just do the one. Where is Catherine? There you are. Catherine, you know how to word this stuff. Would you please?
Sure, Madam Chair. I'd like to make a motion to approve the ZBA rules of policy and procedure as amended and noted changes in this meeting.
I'll second it.
Seconded by Ann Brockelman. Everybody's going to vote. Brian Cook.
Aye.
Ann Brockelman.
Aye.
Cecia Daglian.
Yay.
Ann Fullerton.
Aye.
Zachary Zarimba.
Aye.
Catherine Garavaglia.
Aye.
And Susan Fontano, aye. Let the record show that it was unanimous, 5 regular members voting as well as 2 alternates. Thank you. Hey, how did I do in the pronunciation then, everybody? You proud of me? Especially Zach. I think that was the first time I ever said your last name. Okay, so next on our agenda is board elections. Emily, you like hanging out with us tonight and keeping Charlie company?
I
You
I
having
do.
fun yet?
I enjoy this very much. I love spending time with the board. I am going to go now because I don't ever roll in board elections, and my dog is telling me that she needs to go out.
All right. Well, thank you for all your help tonight. We appreciate it. See
Thank
you
you all.
soon. So the next thing on the agenda is the elections. At this time, I'd like to open the nominations for the City of Somerville Zoning Board of Appeals for the year 2023. May I ask for nominations for the position of the chair?
Ma'am, I move
And
to nominate Susan Fontano to the position of chair. I think she's has shown great leadership, wisdom, and it's been a pleasure to work with you over the years, Madam Chair. Thank you.
thank you very much. I accept that. Are there any other nominations? Oh, we need a second on that, I believe.
Second.
Seconded by Brian. Thank you, Brian. And we ask now that are there any other nominations for chair? Anybody else interested? Don't be shy. Hearing none, we'll close the portion of the nominations for chair and go to the roll call vote. I have to ask Charlotte, if you know this, I think alternates vote on this, don't they? They don't? They
I'm
can't
gonna
hold a
say
seat, but I'm not sure.
I'm gonna say yes. I will say that because this is board administration, I don't think that we're likely to have anyone appeal the board's decision. So we can be a little more relaxed with some of the rules. This is not going to be a vote that's recorded with the city clerk. I will also say if the board wishes to see if there are nominations for the other two positions and then do one vote at the end for all three of the positions, assuming that there is one nomination for each position, that could also be an approach, but it's up to the board what you do.
Well, unfortunately, no one's really discussed this. I don't know if there are any other nominations for the clerk or the vice chair. Is that what you're saying? Is that what you're saying? Because I'm running on a vote.
We could see if there are nominations, and if there are nominations, or if there are multiple nominations for one position, we can take that position separately. And if there aren't multiple nominations, we can take all three of the positions.
No,
as
I don't
one
like
vote.
that. I personally don't like that.
That's totally
One
fine.
at a time, and that's it. And you
That's
had your
fine.
hand up, though. I don't want to disregard you. What is that?
No,
Ann
I was
Fullerton?
going to make it. Thank you, Madam Chair. Nominated Madam Chair. I was going to make a nomination for the vice chair, but it sounds like we are voting one at a time.
Right. Okay, good. So there are no other nominations. We'll close the nominations of chair at this time and ask for the vote. Brian Cook. You just have to say the name. Ann Brockelman.
Aye for Susan Fontano.
Alicia Daglian.
Yay.
Ann Fullerton.
Aye for Susan Fontano.
Catherine Garavaglia.
Aye for Susan Fontano.
And Zachary Zaremba.
Aye for Susan Fontano.
And I, Susan Fontano, for Susan Fontano. Let the record show it was unanimous, 5 regular members and 2 alternates voting. Before we go any further, I really want to thank everybody. It's crazy some weeks. I know sometimes I get a little crazed, but I hope you're all happy with what I'm doing. And if ever you're not, you got to tell me about it because we can fix anything. So thank you very, very much. And I look forward to this year and working with all you guys, a full board, and all you newbies as well. I really want to get to know you. Thank you. The next thing would be vice chair, I guess. Let's see. Are there any nominations for vice chair? Ann Fullerton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to nominate Ann Brockelman as second longest standing member of the board. I think she is the most likely sucker for vice chair.
Oh, wow. Okay, so we have Ann Brockleton. Do we have a second for Ann? Anybody
Second.
want a second Ann? Who's that? Catherine seconds. Okay. Are there any other nominations for vice chair at this time? Seeing none and hearing none, we'll close that portion then of the voting and open it up for the vote. All in favor of Ann Brockelman as the new position of vice chair, please say your name and please say their name. You have to say Ann's name for the board. So it's Brian Cook,
Aye for Ann Brockelman.
Ann Brockelman,
Yes, thank you for the nomination, and aye for Ann Brockelman.
Alicia Daglian,
Aye for Ann Brockelman.
Ann Fullerton,
Aye for Ann Brockelman.
Zachary Zaremba,
Aye for Ann Brockelman.
and Catherine Garavaglia.
Aye for Ann Brockelman.
And I, Susan Fontano, for Ann Brockelman, who I'm very, very glad to see get into this new seat. We're gonna get to see all your new talents you have. So welcome and thank you. Good luck. Do you have something you'd like to say?
No, look forward to it. Thank
He's
you.
speechless. Okay. And now let's ask for some nominations for clerk. Are there any nominations, please, for clerk?
I move to nominate Catherine Garavaglia for the position of clerk.
Catherine and Brockelman. I'd like to second that nomination. I think you've done a tremendous job that you've taken it on. And I love that you're a legal eagle and that helps us out sometimes just in case Charlotte needs a little bit of help or something like that. So I second that. Is there another nomination, please, for clerk? Seeing and hearing none, we'll close that portion of the voting and ask for your vote. So in the matter of Catherine Garavaglia for clerk, again, going around say your her name and thank you. Brian Cook,
Aye for Catherine Garavaglia.
Ann Brockelman,
Aye, Catherine Garavaglia for clerk.
Alicia Daglian,
Aye for Catherine Garavaglia.
Ann Fullerton,
Absolutely aye for Catherine Garavaglia.
Zachary Zaremba,
Aye for Catherine Garavaglia.
Susan Fontano for Catherine Garavaglia, and Catherine Garavaglia.
Aye for Catherine Garavaglia.
Great, congratulations. Let the record show again. Unanimous, 5 regular members and 2 alternates voting. Thank you, everybody.
Madam Chair.
Catherine, do you have anything you want to say?
Chair, Madam Chair.
Yes, sir.
Point of order. Point of order.
Yes.
Would the clerk please pronounce her full name so we all pronounce it correctly?
I was going to say, none of you realized it was going to be a test of your Italian speaking abilities, and not so great. But we all tried, and it's Garavaglia or Garavaglia. The second G is silent, but.
Oh, like a lasagna.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm also.
Garavaglia. Oh, all right. Okay. Brian, did you know this? Is that why you're embarrassing the rest of us?
Well, she pronounced her name correctly, so I assume that was the correct pronunciation.
Yes, I noticed.
I know. See, she's showing off now. Well, hey, I don't let you have to call me Ursula every week. I'm giving you the American version here, Susan.
Hey, it was a very good shot, and I watched all of you panic for a half second as you went for it.
That beat.
Yeah.
Well, listen, in all seriousness, I'm really looking forward to this year. I like the way the newbies, I'll call you the newbies for tonight, the last time, you're really chiming in and voicing your opinion. And that's what we want. You know, many minds is, you know, we have a lot of things going for us, and we accomplish a lot and really challenge some of these cases that with different people on the board and different way you look at things, we're not open to embarrassment. We're open to do a nice job with bright, intelligent people making the right choices for the city and the neighbors and the people who live next door to these buildings. So I don't know if anybody else has something to say. I do want to thank staff always. Charlotte, we love having you backing us up. You keep us honest and safe. So keep on doing what you're doing, please, and pass it on to the rest of the staff in the office. You know, we don't get to see them all the time. So, Catherine, do you have anything you'd like to say tonight, or Ian, any of you elected officials here?
Oh, I was gonna make a motion to adjourn.
Hey. Well, I'll let you do that as long as Ian's all set. All right, Ian, Fullerton, Cecilia, Brian, anybody? Will we close up? No? Okay. Go ahead, Catherine Garavaglia. How'd I do? I did better. I could feel it.
I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Seconded by Ian Brockelman. All in favor? Here we go. Ian Brockelman,
Aye.
Ian Fullerton,
Aye.
Catherine Garavaglia,
Aye.
and Susan Fontano, aye. Let the record show 5 regular members voting in the positive. See you all February 1st. Good night. Thank you all.
Good night, everyone.